Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Right Here in the Sanctuary, and welcome to those of you who are joining us on YouTube. We have two congregations, and many of the people that you here in the room may not know, but many of the people that are online are not local. So there's some that may be local who, well, I think the cliche is they want to stay in their pajamas, so they come online. But I think there are plenty of reasons why people will choose to watch online. But those who live in Florida or those who live in Kansas, they don't have a choice. And so we welcome them. We're glad they're here, as much as we are glad that all of you are here. So what's happening this week primarily is our yard sale that is coming up on Saturday. And those who are volunteering are going to be doing lots of things. They've started today. I haven't walked next door, but my husband's volunteering, and he was going to be there early and busy and carrying and deciding what to do. It's a very labor-intensive fundraising opportunity. But at the same time, it's one of those volunteering opportunities where you're mixing with people, you're laughing, you're joking, you're going, what do you think this thing is? What does anybody know what this is? Because you have all these unusual things that you get in from other people. It's really kind of fun. And so I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing for community. And so I'm glad that we're doing it. So by the time we get to Sunday, we have our Sunday morning service, and we have the between class that comes before, which is at 10:15. I'm not sure where they're going to have it because of all that yard sale business. They may be making provisions for that. I haven't actually asked that question because on Sunday, we will continue with the remnants of the yard sale. Maybe we move it to the side and the discussion group happens. We do I know we'll have some hospitality because you need a cup of coffee while you're shopping through the stuff. So I know we're going to do it. How it happens, just go with the flow. It will be fine. Everything will work out. But our guest speaker, though, is really someone that you all may not know. I don't know if he's been down to Founders or not, but he has been here a couple of times. His name is Reverend Kusala, and he is a Buddhist monk. And he says that he's he is an American-born Buddhist monk, and he is inspired in certain Buddhist traditions. He was at Arrowhead with us in the last time, before most recent times, that we were at Arrowhead. And it was a joy to sit with him. Now, the thing about the Buddhist tradition, there's a lot of overlay with things that we believe, but there are things that are different. And to me, that's never been an issue in Science of Mind because it wasn't with Ernest Holmes. He knew what he believed, and he's looking always for this common thread of belief that he believes went through everything like that, and he looked for that. And so when you're listening for that, when you're listening for Reverend Kusala, you'll go, oh, yes. And then other things you might go, maybe not. And you may not hear anything like that. Because what he's talking about is 3 easy steps to bring your spiritual practice to life. Well, that sounds like fun. So I'm looking forward to hearing it myself. I think it will be delightful. And he's a delightful individual. I think you will be entertained by him as well as inspired by what he has to say. So that's on Sunday, and then by Tuesday, we're doing some of our regular activities. Reverend Kathy's book reading continues out there in the foyer, and they're reading Your Aladdin's Lamp, and also known as Your Inner Light, and it was sort of co-written with a person that is well known to Founders, and so that is also part of this whole mystic and how things go together in bringing forth this truth. That was Bill Hornaday who was the second author. And then also on Tuesday, Reverend Kathy's class is at 10, goes till 11. And then on Tuesday, we have yoga in Richelieu Hall. And it was in here this last week simply because of other things happening in Richelieu Hall. But it'll be back in Richelieu Hall, so you bring a mat, towel, whatever it is that you like, and just plan to have your consciousness rested, is the way I would say, in a stretching, lovely breathing way. Then we come to Wednesday, as we are now, and before the 11 o'clock service, we have another book reading class. This book reading class is only on Zoom, whereas Reverend Kathy's is only in person. And we just enjoy the stretching of our consciousness in that way during that class. We're reading The Art of Life by Ernest Holmes, and it's the occasion for whatever's going on in our lives in most every instance. So then we come to, this is next week now, because we're looking ahead. We have on the Friday the 17th, we will have the Labyrinth in Richelieu Hall. And this is an opportunity for you to do mind and body connection. And since this month in Science of Mind, the topics, I'm not sure that Reverend Kuselas is on this topic, but the CSL at large is exploring the body and how that part of it that we're contributing to our spiritual growth and health. And mind-body connection is right there in the labyrinth, because you walk the labyrinth and you are able to blend those things together. And it's a very spiritual activity. It is from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And we always remind you to come to that Nob Hill entrance right out there. This place, this parking lot, and over there, you're just going to have to go a long way around. So if you can park on the street, all the rest of this is locked and you think nobody is home. But that's the door that you want to go through in order to participate. So that is what we're doing. And we do it all with all of our members in mind, whether you're online, whether you're here. We're offering all kinds of ways that you can grow your own spirit and grow your own understanding of yourself, because that's what we're all about, that awakening within ourselves of that spiritual consciousness. And so we thank you for being here. Now, if I were only doing announcements, I would step over to the side here and I would welcome the speaker that's coming in. But since I'm the speaker, I'm just going to put down the announcements and pick up whatever else I was going to hold and begin. I didn't plan last week that I would be here this week, but things change, right? And we're learning to go with the flow. I may as well learn because I'm flowing, and I am going to allow that to learn, and I help myself to learn as I'm going with the flow. And I thank you all for being here. But let us begin in prayer. I know that I've had a lot of conversation outside this room about yard sale. How do we do this, and how do we do that? What are we going to do about this? So I very much want to center my own self and what the real reason that I'm here for. And that is to reveal, to understand, and explain that power and presence that is within us all. And so this is what I know. The power that is God within me is truly, truly all there is. And as I move through my days, understanding and revealing to myself what it means to say is all there is. Of course, it includes me. I am a part of God. I am this point of light. I'm this point of intelligence. I am this point of love. And I am a point that was within the wholeness that I imagine from my human perspective. But from my divine perspective, when I breathe in and allow my consciousness to simply lift up and rise, there is much greater understanding. And so what I know is within my understanding, there is this idea that I am always God expressing. And whether I choose consciously to express from that power is the choice that only I have. I get to make that. And it is happening in every moment of my living. As I breathe in a moment and then exhale that moment, that is my moment. What am I thinking? What am I planning? How am I being? And I am choosing to come from this divine energy I'm calling love. It is this flow through me that is divine. It's always flowing, even when I'm not paying attention. And what I want to know is that I allow this energy to express through me in goodness in the highest and best way possible for all concerned. That is my intention. And so what I know right now, and allow myself to know in the moments to come, is that everything that moves through me, from the meditations of my own heart to the words, to the feelings, to the expression, come from that divine light and love of all there is, the Creator, my source. And I know that this intention is good. It is the best. And I know that as I move through this, things may come to me. Things may occur to me that I'm not necessarily expecting, and I know that that is that inspiration of spirit that I depend on, so that I do achieve the highest and best for all concerned. And I also know that everything that I know for myself can be known in all minds. And I know that all minds include all minds in this world. And love is God. God is love. And if that truth is lifted up, I know that it envelops the one mind and can be known by anyone, anywhere, but for the opening of consciousness. And that is my intention, to lift that up. That is my word, that I can be exactly as I am choosing to be consciously. This is the truth. And when words of truth are spoken, they are taken in by that principle that God is, that brings everything into our experience. I agree and say, and so it is. In thinking about what I was going to talk about this week or today, the word that came to my mind was, I think the word was eruptions. Eruptions. Now, I think that's partly because in a number of different venues that I am a part of, I had seen eruptions. And as I pondered a little bit more, I wasn't sure what I was going to say about that. I was puzzled, but this is what had come to me. And then yesterday there was a memorial here, and I was speaking, I was officiating, I think is the word, at this memorial. And one of the things that came to me in that process of thinking about immortality, because that is something that you talk about at a memorial, that Ernest Holmes says that there's no such thing as death, that there is a transition, essentially, from one life form to the next. And so I am talking to quite a lot of people in here to whom that may be a new idea. So I had planned to talk a little bit about Ernest Holmes. And I don't even remember what I planned to say. I'm not even sure what I did say. But the fact that Ernest Holmes is a who to many people in there, and yet he grounds this teaching, and the woman who made her transition was very much a part of this center. She was active. She was just a divine light. I can remember her. They had moved away from this area to another part of California, but I could see her and her husband back there. I very clearly. And she was, the picture that was on the front of the program was a vibrant, happy woman. And there were many other pictures, but I loved that picture. And so I felt honor-bound to at least say enough about Ernest Holmes and enough about the teaching that people could understand how important this center was to her at one point, to open their own thinking to what she believed. So I thought about immortality. And then I'm thinking about Ernest Holmes. And see, this is where Spirit just does its work. I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking the phrase that came to me was immortality was in Ernest Holmes' DNA. And that just sort of came to me. But it's true, because while he grew up in this rural hamlet, actually the family moved around a lot, but I'm thinking of this one place in particular that his folks, they went to church every Sunday. And you may recall, Ernest's mother had 9 boys. 8 were living, and Ernest was the youngest, but they all piled into some sort of buckboard, and they all went to church on Sundays. This was a church-going family. And there's an incident that's told in one of the biographies about how they were coming back from church, and it was a day when the preacher had really fired up, and he was talking a lot about evil and, us being the worthless worms of the earth and that sort of thing. And Ernest Holmes' father got away from the church, and he pulled that buckboard over the side, and he says, "Look, you are not a worm." And then he went on and said the things that were part of that DNA of who Ernest Holmes was. This is not true. You are, he talked about the goodness, and he talked about the love, and he talked about those things that we know that Ernest became a part of who he was. He was a young boy when this happened. So it was in his DNA. And that's the chain of thought that I had, which then put me in mind of the fact that they later discovered, some of the older boys may have already known, that after everybody went to bed, and they're in this cabin, essentially with a loft, which is where the boys all slept. So they're down below, and they're huddled by the fire, and they would read what they called their secret book. And that secret book is something that it was written by Henry Drummond. Henry Drummond is not someone that you may have even heard of, much less have read his book. But Henry Drummond was trained also as a botanist, as a scientist, and so in this secret book, he talks about things that understand us in this web of life. So it was a much more enlightened way of thinking than many people may have thought in the late 19th century in rural Maine. But the book, I had that book, but I don't have it in my possession at this point. But before I was even thinking, I pulled out this other book by Henry Drummond, because it is the most popular book. The man was not well known. I could tell you the people that he knew, and you might not know them either. But how he came to publish this is interesting. And the title of the book is The Greatest Thing in the World. And it was celebrated in largely Christian circles because it expounds on Corinthians 13. the greatest of these is love, as the message. And so once upon a time, he was at some meeting. The meeting was over, and a few were gathered in front of the fire. And the person who was really the leader in that group, which was not Henry Drummond, was asked to make some remarks. And he said, you know, I've been speaking all day. I'm really a little tired. And he said, Henry, would you talk? And so Henry talked to that group about love. When he got through, all of these people who were much more important in the world than he was were so moved that he was invited to speak at a big meeting that was going to happen. It was quite an honor for Henry Drummond. And this is what he spoke. And he talked about love in a little bit different way than everyone was used to talking about it. And he talked about it in such a way that it found ways to be used. And that was the part that really interested me. He was not allowing just say, you've got to give love, you've got to be love. He talked on the different aspects of love and how you can manifest that in the world. And then we may know synonyms for love. I know I use kindness a good bit because to me that is an active way of expressing love. And that's essentially what he said. It's an active way. He also used the word patience because sometimes that's what's called for. It's a more passive expression of love. But patience and humility. Because if it's never about you, it's only about the giving and receiving of love, how else could you be? And that he goes through the entire short book, and talks about a number of things. And one of the most, there's several that were very moving. He talked about the prodigal son and the notion that he can see in his mind's eye, and he paints the picture of the older brother. Now, does everyone know the story of the prodigal son who has left his father's house? He says, give me my inheritance. I want to go out on my own. And he does. And he squanders that inheritance and finds himself in a pig trough somewhere and says, my father's servants live better than this. I'm going to go to my father's house. And in the biblical scripture, it says he came to himself. And he recognized this. And we, in metaphysical terms, think of that as waking up. I now know who I am. And so he started back home. Meanwhile, back at home, there is the older brother who's been faithful to his father, who has served, who stayed, who've done all the work, done everything that needed to be asked of him. And yet, here is this prodigal, this wayward younger brother who already took his money, and now he's coming back, and we're going to kill the fatted calf, and we're going to welcome with open arms as if nothing happened. So here he is, angry, steaming, resentful, outside of the room. So Henry Drummond talks about him. And he talks about how when there's love, that sort of thing never happens. Because if it's all about love, it doesn't matter who gets the credit. That we celebrate those who come to themselves, regardless of how it happened and what they did. And so that lesson is something that we teach in religious science, but it has been thought of, 100 years before. He was someone that was living and writing books when Ernest Holmes was a boy. And so it is it's a very humbling thing. And that notion of temper, and that's the word he uses, he has a lot to say in the book about temper. And I read about one person living in our current time who knew that his grandfather, cherished this book. And his grandfather's intention was to buy enough copies to give it to all of his grandchildren and others. But he died too soon to have accomplished that. So one of his grandsons was mindful of that. And he had read the book, and he tried to understand what it was about that book that motivated his grandfather to do that. And his grandfather did say to him, he said, I have had a very poor temper in my life, and it's not something that I'm pleased about. So I read this book. In other words, he did essentially an affirmative treatment for himself on a regular basis. I read this book in order to move my own heart, and I learned to not only control my temper, I learned to simply let it be. Whatever things might have angered me, he affirmatively came to the notion of all I really need to do is to love. And when that is my goal, when that is my intention, and I move myself through that every day, and that's what Ernest Holmes says, that we have to affirmatively center ourselves in spirit. See, there's that divine pattern that Ernest talks about within each of us. Your divine pattern is not the same as mine. It's divine, both are divine, but they're not exactly the same. Everyone's is different. That's that uniqueness that we have. I uniquely express God, and so do all. So do all. And how I take this affirmative teaching, this idea that I need to love everybody, and that's, as a vague term, is maybe harder to navigate. So one of the things that he talks about are the different ways that we do it. And good temper is one of them. And sincerity is another. And unselfishness. That idea of giving of yourself as well as whatever things and money, whatever you choose to give away. But there is an unselfishness about it. If it's your turn to cut the cake, then I allow you to cut the cake. That's okay. If it's your turn to be in the light, then that's okay. I know that I'm exactly where I need to be at every time, in every place. And when I know that, it doesn't matter whether explosions happen over here or something untoward happens there. I am where I need to be. And if I've done my work, and it is work sometimes, because we have to emotionally and mentally and physically give time to pondering the things that are already there to know. They're here, they're right around us. This energy that God is all around me. I can stand anywhere, even within confusion, and know that where I am, God is. And we say that. But we have to know that and practice it in order for it to be in our spiritual DNA. And that's what I want. I didn't have the same parents that Ernest Holmes had. I learned a lot of things that I may be unlearning as time goes on, but they were poured into me simply because it was in the culture that I lived in. And so when he talks about an angry preacher in northern Maine, I'm going, I've seen him. He was an angry preacher in Aquila, Alabama, but I saw that man. I know what that's like. And I've seen, and it doesn't have to go back to my childhood. I didn't even turn on the volume, but I was scrolling through something and saw this angry preacher saying all kinds of things, and I didn't like the look of his body, much less did I want to hear what he had to say, but because there was anger. And God is love, and I didn't see that, and I don't want to muddy my own waters with even listening to it. I don't need to do that. What I do need to do is what is mine to do. And wherever I am, that's where I'm supposed to be. And I use the word explosion because there evidently was one in this vicinity yesterday. And a whole lot of traffic lights were out all around over there, which I didn't go through them when I got here yesterday, but I was told, oh, this stopping, then you can't get through, and that, a lot of things like that. My first thought was, and my second thought, but my first thought was, well, it didn't happen to this church. We were with power. And the second thought was, many years ago, there was an explosion almost in the same place. And somebody ran into a transformer, blew up, and we were without power in this church. I think it was at the 9 o'clock service we did in the dark. And of course, there was no microphone, but we did it right here in the dark. We had an event that day in the kitchen, and that's what I remember. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to cook without electricity. We have gas over there, so I'm scheming with how I'm going to get this done, and then boom, here comes the power. So explosions happen, and they affect people in different ways. And how do we deal with it? But see, that is life. Nobody, as far as I know, I mean, none of us did anything wrong. And yet, it happened. Does that happen in your life? Have there been explosions over here? And if it has nothing to do with you, how much did you get over here and involve yourself in it? How much did you try to I don't know, get involved with it? You may help. But to dive into the heart of the explosion may not be what is yours to do. To take care of business and do what is mine to do, that's what I want to do. And so I can't stop thinking about all of that, and plus the thinking about yesterday, the wonderful thing that happened at this memorial. As I said, this woman, her name was Tracy. She was a delightful woman. And what I heard right here from both her husband and I heard later from different people, that she believed and practiced unconditional love. And she had 3 sons that were losing their mother too soon as far as they were concerned. And there were grandchildren there. And they're not happy. They want the touch, the feel, the smile of their grandmother or their wife or their sister. That's what they want. And so the idea that we come here today to celebrate what she was and to understand we still get to feel the loss. We feel it. And we use that as a motivation to do what she did, which was to love. Everywhere she went, she was a helping hand. She was a creator. She did work. And she lived her life to the fullest. My goodness, if it could be said of us that that is what we did, what a wonderful epitaph. So in closing, I'm This is Art of Life is the book that we're reading. And Ernest Holmes almost always has something to say. And he says, in talking about life and how we deal with those things that come into our lives, he invites us to remember what it means to be whole and complete within, and to reconcile that part of us that doesn't feel that way. We are whole and complete, but when we don't feel that way, what we do, and he says, Jesus reminds us that the kingdom is at hand, meaning it's here. That force of life is all here. God is the creator of you and me and everything we see, but also of the unseen that we don't see, the possibilities, the things that exist in our imagination. And so that's how it is at hand. The kingdom is here for us to direct it into our lives, because we are the director of our own lives. I don't direct anyone else's. I direct mine. And so when I direct that, even if I don't completely understand how it's going to get there, I leave that up to that principle, that power, the highest and best for all concerned. And that is what I choose to say. So then he says, it is a natural desire to enter more fully into life, to enter into a state of greater livingness, a more complete self-expression. The very desire you have to do this rises from the urge of life that was incarnated within you. That is the thing we think of when we see the birds nesting, and they're so actively nesting and chirping. I have bushes in my yard with these buds that are bursting with life and ready to be. It's the spring in nature. But there is always that potential for spring within each of us. There are buds, there are seeds, there is the urge. And it's there always, simply waiting for you and for me to claim it and to direct the flow of energy to my good. And that's the way it is. And I thank you for being here. Thank you all. And this is the time that Ruthie's going to pass the plate. And I was told on Sunday when I was directing the plate that I used a word wrong. And so I'm going to try and fix that. Divine love consecrates my gift. It goes forth to heal, to bless, and to prosper. It prospers all who give and all who receive. I rejoice in the sharing of my gift, and I release my gift with love. Or maybe it's my good. See, we have changed that word, that it's, anyway, it's good. Thank you. And so this is the time, if you have a question, have a question. I love questions. It gives us interaction time, and that's what I like about those book circles, the Sunday morning discussions. What I like about the book discussion that I have is their questions, and we deal. It's just a great opportunity. So if anyone has one, step up. And yes.
Question, but it is interesting. Of course, people always say, oh, what you talked about was exactly what I needed today. But I mean, it's down to the, it's like, wow. Dealing with, in fact, I wrote a letter today, which I have not sent because I was advised to wait a little bit on it and send it later. But dealing with a family member who is very, very angry, and it's not directed at me, but my actions are somebody else is being
blame.
Yeah, all those things just, they don't just hurt, they destroy.
Yes.
Absolutely destroy. And so it was, it was a beautiful confirmation. I'm certainly going to look up that book. Is it Drummond? Is that what you said?
Drummond, Henry Drummond.
Yeah, I got Henry, but I want to be sure I had the right.
Drummond, right.
Because it's amazing, and I can just see how anger consumes a person. And also what you said about sincerity. It isn't that we need somebody to say, I love you. Oh, yeah, I love you. You know, it's like,
Right.
you know, come
Yes.
from the heart or don't come.
Right.
You know, so thank you.
And one of the things that he didn't list on his, at least in the place where he puts a list in the book, is listening. And I actually think that too is an act of love. Because I mean active listening, so that I hear what you say.
Exactly. That's why I had to write the letter, because I knew that my words not be listened to.
Right. And I actually read a letter, really maybe a month or so ago, from someone who published it. So it was out with a smaller group, but still. And it was one of the most beautiful ways of saying, this is not true. And let me share with you what is true. And then went on to say it was kind, it was truthful, it was a beautiful way to address someone who's mad at me because I did. And she, man, I cried when I read that. And this is on a listserv. So I immediately wrote her back and congratulated her on the letter, and how I explained how I thought it was kind and what I want to do. And I think I was talking about this last week. When I disagree with someone, I want to be able to disagree. Because if you're saying things that is fundamentally untrue in my world, I can't just be silent while you say things that I not only think are untrue, I feel they're harmful. But that doesn't mean I attack you. That doesn't mean I call you names. It doesn't mean that I do anything but say, I simply cannot agree. And I always depend on the inspiration of Spirit as I open my mouth to do that, because I know what my intentions are. That doesn't, as you're saying, you're not sure how they'll be received. I just thought she did it perfectly. And I had to say so I did. And that, she actually left on vacation, and I didn't hear back from her for a long time. And she, of course, appreciated what I had to say. And then she went on to say that she was urged to do what she did within her own self because there were other people involved, and she felt that she had to support them as well. And so that's what she did. And there are a lot of people involved in your situation. And I just know that there are people who are so consumed with anger that they're not able to see. They're just not able to see. And so you simply bless them where they are. That's all you really can do. And I'm not trying to say send the letter or not send the letter. No, I'm not even going there. But it is for your own peace of mind. And something may come to you. You may be inspired in some way or another to address this in some way that is meaningful. And if that's what you want, then you will. I truly believe in that.
I do too, and actually the missing part that you're supplying there is what you're saying is it's just not the truth.
Yes.
And this is the truth.
Right.
I did portray the truth, but I didn't use that word. You know,
And I think, and you're always saying it's for me. What I am telling you is I cannot support what you're saying, as opposed to it's not true. It may also have that trait, but if I'm just going to say it's from me, then I don't believe what you just said. And depending on the situation, you may say what you do believe, but maybe not. I think it. And I know there have been times right in this center that I failed to do that. And so I'm just being honest. I've heard people say things that I and I didn't want to make a fuss. Well, I've stepped out of that because not making a fuss is truly not the kind thing to do. It may be nice, but it's not kind. Kind is honest. And kind is love. And it was nice to see his support that idea that kind is love. Thank you for that. That's a great question. Does anyone else have a comment or a question? Yes.
I just love that you mentioned Tipper, and I have a son now, and I had him for a very long time, living with me for a time being, and he's always angry. And he's on the bench, he's an attorney on the bench, and we're going downtown. And he says to me, "Who are these drivers? Blah, 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 blah." I have surrounded the car with love and compassion, and I know God is strong, but it's interesting the way how you are feeling and acting.
Right.
Who are these people in front of me? Don't they know how to? I mean, it was interesting when you talked about the prodigal son, because I've got one out there. And I love the word explosion, and you started with eruption. I love that word, because in that car,
That's what you're saying.
yes, and the thing that I learned from CSL a long time ago was what's surrounding you. You're a magnet. What is surrounding you is who you
It's
are.
an atmosphere.
And it tells you how you're doing. Well, today to hear how you said that is so life-affirming to know this is a prodigal son.
Yes.
I'm just so excited to have it. Yeah, so I like the word when you said eruption.
Well, you know, I grew up with that kind of driver, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, I'll try to leave the cursing out of it, but he was hilarious, my dad. He was just hilarious. He'd curse something and to my mother, "Katie, he's not playing with a full deck." And then he would invoke the Holy Family. He was trained as a Catholic. And they're not playing with, "Oh, I can't believe it." And he went on and on and on. And so when I had friends, see, I wasn't even ashamed because it was so funny. Now, that part interests me now. I'm like 14, and I got my friends to drive with. I said, "My daddy's going to drive. This is going to be fun," because he's guaranteed to do it. So my friend was sitting there. Of course, my dad performs, because he always does when he drove. And she was just white. She could not believe the explosion, the erupt. He couldn't believe it, that he would actually do that. But I'm just chuckling because I actually did think it was funny. I still do. And I'm sad for him that blah, blah, blah. But anyway. Yes.
Cracking me up because I kept my mouth zipped. Mom, I just don't know how this keeps happening to me.
Well, we all have something to learn, is what it says. We all have something to learn. And if you ever hear yourself say the words, "I did not call this into my experience. I am not going to forgive them. I am," all of those things, when you say that out loud, nobody's there to change that. But you want to at least know the fact that you're affirming it so vehemently means that you already know that you brought this on yourself. You already know that forgiveness is truly the answer, or you wouldn't be all upset about it. See, that kind of energy is what calls attention to what it is your subconscious is saying. Look at this. Look at this. When you're not moved by something, then it doesn't have anything to do with you. It's a lot, isn't it? That subconscious is busy. Busy, busy, busy. Mine is, anyway. Spilling all over itself. I don't want to keep anyone longer than you need to be here. Please have a lovely day and find the way to the yard sale this week, right? So it's going to be fun. I'll be here checking people out. So see you all. Thank you for being here.